Hello, my name is Rachel Bauer, and I am the social media correspondent for the 2024 Nitrate Picture Show. I am here with Peter Vro, the senior curator of the motion picture department at the George Eastman Museum and director of the Nitrate Picture Show. And I understand you have an announcement for us today about what the first screening of the 8th Nitrate Picture Show will be.
Yep. Hello, Rachel. Happy to talk about this. So, just for those who don't know, we do not announce the titles until the press conference, the first day of the festival, which will be Thursday, May 30th this year. And that's when we will announce everything but the very last one, which will be our blind date with Nitrate. That one is not announced at all. You find out what the title is when the curtain rises. But we have been announcing the Thursday night screening for a while. And the last two were festival favorites, films that we screened earlier. So it was a print of Portrait of Jenny from our own collection 2 years ago. And last year it was a legendary print of Black Narcissus from the Academy Film Archive. So this year, it is not a festival favorite. Maybe it will become one, who knows, but it's a print we've never screened before. It comes to us, well, currently from the Library of Congress, but it had quite a trajectory. It traveled across the Atlantic twice. It will be a print, a silent print, a silent tinted print of D.W. Griffith's film Intolerance.
Oh my God. Wow. I so as you may recall, when I was a student at the Selznick School of Film Preservation, and that's probably the truncated version, my senior special project was on applied color, tinting and toning to silent cinema. So I've handled prints like this, like back when I was a student. But based on the age alone, I know it's really rare for them to still be projectable. I think it was the second or third festival. There was that screening of, was it Ramona from
Yep.
Russia? Yeah. And I was absolutely flabbergasted to see something like of that age, of that vintage. Um, so I
Well, I have to be accurate. This is not a print from 1916.
fair.
I don't think there was a single print from the 19 teens of Intolerance that exists. But this print was made from whatever remained of the camera negative in 1935. That's when the print was struck. So it's still 89 years old.
Yeah.
And it was very rare at the time to apply tinting to new prints. This was made for MoMA, for the Museum of Modern Art.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
when they acquired films by Griffith, and they were friends with Griffith, we don't know for sure. There's still a lot to be investigated about this print. I suspect, don't want to be very cautious about this, that Griffith had something to do with the creation of this print and the tinting. Because Griffith cut the film. Intolerance was a very long film, and he cut it to make two shorter films out of it. It was, one of the most complicated and sophisticated narratives of its time, with 4 stories happening simultaneously, almost the 5th one, because there is the mother that rocks the cradle, played by Lillian Gish. So he cut the negative. Then the film was reassembled for MoMA, and Griffith participated in that. They made, as people thought, 2 prints, but now we know that there are at least 3. Were 3. Made from the negative where it existed, and from the dupe negative where it did not exist. So this is a complete print. I think there is one more at UCLA. I don't know its condition, but this may be the 2 only prints of Intolerance made from the camera negative that exist nowadays, because every archive has something on Intolerance, basically, but it's usually very, very dupey, and the digital restoration that you see do not look stunning at all, because unfortunately we do not have the 1916 prints, maybe fragments, but not the complete thing.
That's just again, it's so impressive because, I mean, one, the fact that Griffith got to oversee this work. Museum of Modern Art, who has long been a collaborator with the festival. I believe they loaned their print of Casablanca for the inaugural festival. Um, and the fact that they went through the trouble of redoing the tinting and toning, and you said this was in 1935, so you really didn't have film restoration culture as a thing yet. And I know tinting and toning was rarely seen in movies of the 1930s, in part because, well, one, you had advancements in color processes, but you also had just the soundtracks, the optical soundtracks did not do well with the dye baths. Um,
Yeah,
so
well, the thing
that's
is,
impressive.
well, this is only tinting, no toning. And not to get into the chemistry for those who don't know how it works. Tinting, to put it bluntly, is where all the whites turn into a different color, blue or red or amber or orange. Toning is when the blacks turn into different color, and you can combine them and have two colors. So this print is just tinted, not toned. We do not think that the tinting ideally matches what was there in 1916, but you are right, it is absolutely unique for somebody to go through this trouble and tint something in the 30s. And that is because MoMA had a very special feeling towards Griffith and relationship with him. So Iris Berry, one of the pioneers of film archiving and first curator of the film department at MoMA, the idea was that they would collect those films that are worthy of being in the Museum of Modern Art. So something on the level of a painting by Picasso or Matisse, something like this. And frankly, she was much more interested in European cinema. And she would get German films and French films and Soviet films. And there were not too many American directors of whom she thought very highly. Chaplin was one of them, Erich von Stroheim was one of them, and definitely Griffith was one of them. So this is why if they're acquiring a brand new print of Intolerance, they want it to be as authentic as possible. So that's why it was lavish and tinted. What is interesting, by the way, MoMA was very often at the time making safety prints because safety stock existed, diacetate film, and there are even little sections of this print that are on safety stock. And I wonder if the audience would be able to tell the difference. One not always can do that. And we're lucky that they're in great condition because the thing is that diacetate doesn't age well. So very often you would have a diacetate print from the 1930s, which is in much worse condition than a nitrate print. But this print had quite a journey. Now there's a tendency, we apply the word journey to everything. This film did have a journey, this print. We don't know exactly when that happened, but the print ended up in Germany at the Reichsfilmarchiv. And probably we can guess what happened because the International Federation of Film Archives, known as FIAF, was founded in 1938, right before the war, and the fact that the war was inevitable was obvious, at least to intellectuals, to archivists. It was founded by archivists from 4 countries: United States, Iris Berry namely, France, Great Britain, UK, and Germany, which was Nazi Germany at the time. And the idea was, in spite of the world falling apart, archives have to collaborate and exchange films. And that's what they were doing. Iris Berry was getting some of the great German films, Expressionism and Kammerspiele, and some of Lubitsch's films from Germany, and the Germans wanted American films. So most probably in exchange for some print of a film by Murnau or Fritz Lang or Pabst, I don't know, Iris Berry sent them a print of Intolerance. So it was at the Reichsfilmarchiv. Well, very soon the war started and Nazi Germany was no more. And then the prints from the Reichsfilmarchiv partially went to the United States, but mainly to Soviet Russia. And some of them stayed in Germany, in East Germany, in GDR. So this print ended up in the GDR Film Archive. Then when East and West Germany reunited, when the wall fell down and the GDR Film Archive ceased to exist, its collection went to the collection of the Bundesarchiv, the National Archive of Germany. And then in the 90s, the Bundesarchiv repatriated a large group of American prints to the United States, and all of them went to the Library of Congress. So this print, which was initially made for MoMA, then went to Germany and basically was in 1 to 3 German archives, because they're all different archives. And then it went to LOC, and it's in a remarkably good condition. Probably because nobody really screened it a lot in Germany. Germany was not the obvious place to look for Intolerance, because the American archives restored the film multiple times. So, it's what happens when you tint something. So when you apply chemicals, chemicals decompose. Nitrate prints are known to decompose. So usually each tint shrinks differently and decomposes differently. This is the trick. This is why it's so difficult to find a tinted projectable print, because usually red decomposes very badly. Blue fades and so forth. It all depends on what chemicals you're using. So this one, I think, has no decomposition. It is very shrunken. This is the thing with nitrate prints. They shrink. And at first, when the festival started in 2015, we didn't go higher than, I think, 1% shrinkage. We thought that this is putting the print at risk. And then very slowly every year we tested with our own, elements. And some of them were in such good shape, we can see that we can tolerate 1.1. We can tolerate 1.2. Well, this one is mainly 1.4, going sometimes to 1.5. So it'll be one of the most shrunken prints we've ever screened. But, whenever we use our audience as guinea pigs, we do pre-screenings. So this was first, it took weeks to inspect and prepare the print, make sure that all the splices are good. Because another thing, it's not just the shrinkage. Every time there's a splice can fall apart. If it falls apart, film gets damaged, and nitrate film can catch fire. So we want to make sure that every splice is solid. There are ways of testing that. And if they're not solid, we enforce them with tape. So most of the splices were good, but every single splice had to be checked. And we're talking about hundreds of splices. Long film, 13 reels. Sometimes up to 49, I think, splices per reel. Because if you have tinting, every red sequence is spliced to a yellow sequence. And the yellow sequence is spliced to an intertitle. So they're natural splices, not because something was damaged during projection. That's how it was made in 1935. You make all the red ones, you put them in your tinting, bath. Then the same with the green one, the same with the yellow one, then you splice them together. Anyway, so because all that had to be checked, it was weeks of inspection and prep work, and then we did a pre-screening, and it went quite smoothly.
There's so many tangents I would love to go off of based on everything you just said, but I think I'm going to stick with the one at top of mind for me regarding the screening. And this is a little bit esoteric, but I think it fits with your clear wealth of knowledge about this print and this film. I had the pleasure of seeing a restoration of Intolerance at the Silent Film Festival in San Francisco many years back. And one of the things I remember that they told us in their opening remarks was that the frame rate shifted throughout the film. And as most people know, the silent era, there wasn't really a standard across all silent films. Like playback rate, 20, even 24 frames per second, which became sound rate, was based on a survey of was it theater exhibitors, I believe. So that copy, they had somebody altering the speed along with the print, apparently. Are we going to be seeing that again with this projection, or because it is so finicky with all of its splices, with its shrinkage, that you took an average of this is probably what the frame rate should be and are going with that?
We had a long discussion about this. This is a very good question. This is one of the most important questions about silent films, because you can absolutely kill a film by projecting it at the wrong frame rate, either slower or faster. I mean, put an action film or a slapstick comedy and make it a little slower, it's impossible to watch. The same with let's say, Italian diva films, melodramas, or some of the early Russian films, they have to be slow. You speed them up a bit. So every single time, we need to find out what happened, not just in this country or this year, but with this studio, with this filmmaker. You're right. Intolerance had to be projected at different frame rates. It's very slow, mainly 16, but sometimes it goes all the way to 15 usually in the modern stories. And the thing is, there was the director's intention, the way Griffith wanted it to be projected. We had another crazy director who was, by the way, a huge fan of Intolerance, which was Sergei Eisenstein, and he wanted the same with his films. With Battleship Potemkin or October, he had like a score so that a projectionist would play this one, well, play the right word, play this one faster or slower, And of course, other than during the premiere or some of the screenings where the director was present, nobody did that. So it existed and it should not be neglected. It's not just somebody's intention, it was a reality. But I not just doubt, I'm sure that was not the way the prints were screened all over the world. So considering, yes, the difficulty of the prints and on our projectors, which we had at the Dryden Theatre from 1951, from the very beginning, we very rarely go to 16 because we can get a bit of flicker. They can, if we go lower than that, the flickering would be really too much, be very disturbing. There is one shot in Intolerance where even at 16 it feels a little bit bad, but it just goes for a couple of seconds, 10 seconds. So we decided that going to 15, it would be even more tricky for the projectionist because it's a difficult film. I need to look at it all the time to make sure that there are no, accidents, that the loop is big enough, it doesn't get too tight. So that would be difficult, but also the flickering would be a little bit too much on the current projector. So we would stick to 16, which looks good. It couldn't be faster than that. Then it becomes too insane, although sometimes people go to 17. But yeah, that's one nuance probably we will try not to play with because I think it would lead to some negative effects just for the audience.
Yeah. I mean, apart from also protecting the print, and when you protect the print, you protect the audience with Nitrate.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. This being super cautious here there are two reasons. One, of course, nitrate is flammable. We don't want to avoid the fire to protect the people. That goes without any questions. But also, they're all vintage print. They're all museum objects. A painting of by Leonardo or Matisse is not highly flammable, but we protect it nevertheless because it's a work of art. Same thing here. So we want to make sure that that is not damaged, even if there is no risk of fire, even if all that is taken care of, and I think it is because there are many preventive measures there. But it's not just that. If we're entrusted with this print by the Library of Congress in this case, or if we want to project our own print, we want to make sure that it's nothing happens to it and it's treated with all the precautions there should be, which by the way applies to vintage or rare safety prints as well. If you have an original print of The Godfather or of Breakfast at Tiffany's or of a film by Fellini, or Visconti, and we have some of those in our collection, they should be treated with as much care and respect as Nitrate. That's the one thing I would like to highlight. The subtitle of our festival is the Festival of Film Conservation. It's not just about the flammability. We are not excited by that. The flammability is one negative side effect of those prints.
Yeah, I regularly have explained to people, like from my experience handling Nitrate, that it's a lot more stable than people tend to give it credit for. So there is that part of it. To return to this particular print and Intolerance and silent films in general, we know that the silent films were never actually silent. There was always some kind of musical accompaniment or Foley, or in the case of Japan, you had the Benji narrators. For this print of Intolerance, is house pianist Philip Carley going to accompany it, or is another musical group from Rochester coming in to accompany it?
We're very happy to have Philip Carley in town. He's one of the best silent film accompanists in the world and a historian of cinema as well.
Oh yeah, he's the
Um,
he's amazing. I had his class, like when I was a student, he taught the silent film class and then went and accompanied the screenings at the Dryden that night, and it was part of it. It was amazing. I can't say enough good things about him or his playing.
and Philip knows Griffith very well and knows the film very well. So yes, we checked with him. He is available and willing and interested. So this will be a special treat. You know, it's I think he has a connection with this film. And the thing is, he knew about this print for quite a while. That there is this print at the Library of Congress, which, by the way, is one of the prints that we were aware of. I think my colleague Jared Case looked
Mm.
at it years ago, but back then we would never risk projecting something at 1.4 or 1.5. It took us, almost 10 years to get to the point where we can safely, that's the main word, safely project it. So yeah, so we were waiting, but we knew about this print for quite some time. It's what it Philip. Now finally it becomes a reality.
Again, the conservation of the work, but something that I know also comes up in preservation is a film is not fully preserved until it's back on the screen being displayed for audiences.
We will dedicate this festival. I don't think we announced it yet, but to the memory of Wolfgang Klaue. Wolfgang Klaue was one of the legendary archivists. He, as a very young man of about 21, I think he stormed the GDR Film Archive, wanted to get a job. I think he tricked his secretary or something. And became the director at a very, very young age. He was about 30 years old, maybe younger than that. And then he was the head of that archive, and he was one of the key figures in FIAF, the Federation of Film Archives, and the president of FIAF, and played an important role in FIAF's project of locating and repatriating African films, from Europe. Many things he did for the community. He was one of the guests and speakers at the Nitrate Picture Show. I think it was that's when I met him, actually, 2017 or 2018, if I can remember right now. And he died earlier this year at the age of 88. And this print, which came from the archive, which he was the head of, and which was preserved there during his lifetime and repatriated, I think, after he left the archive, but thanks to the list that he compiled at a certain point. So it's I don't know if it's an irony of fate or if it's sort of just the way things line up, but there's something very beautiful about that as well.
Yeah, that's again, lovely tribute to the people who spend their lives making sure that this art lives on.
We don't just celebrate the beauty of Nitrate and those original prints. We celebrate the archives and the archivists and the individuals and the private collectors who not just kept the films, but who kept the films in such a good condition, those prints, that they can be projected. Well, I mean, the latest print we showed was from, I think, 1961 or something, right? So at least 65 years old now, 63. But in this case, almost 90 years old. So again, because there were collectors and even archivists who were very passionate, who loved to collect things, who loved to show them, but they didn't care much about the condition. And they would play the print over and over and over and damage it completely and make it, and then it's gone. And yet there were those who treat them so well that they could be screened exactly as they should be. A painting is made to be exhibited. So is the sculpture, so is the film print. So this is a tribute, of course, to MoMA, to the Bundesarchiv, to the GDR Film Archive, to the Reichsfilmarchiv, all politics aside, it was a great film archive. Of course, the Library of Congress. So that's why it's important to mention all of those institutions and all of those people. We try when we have, as a guest of the festival, somebody from the archive that supply the print. We would like them to introduce the screening and talk about this specific print and its life and the collection in general. So hopefully we'll have somebody from LOC to talk about the print.
Hopefully that'll be fantastic because they always have like the weird insider knowledges and like the quirks of the print. I mean, granted, you like gave an amazing overview of like the challenges for the projectionists, what makes this print unique. For folks who have never seen a Griffith film, we know they exist. What about Intolerance, like narratively, stands out to you and you consider important?
Well, Intolerance was a completely unprecedented film because it's four storylines which take place in the so in Babylon. The other one is well, Christ's story of Christ. Then the Night of Saint Bartholomew in France, and a modern story that takes place in the U.S. in the 19 teens. And so it's cross-cutting. It's, you know, you have to follow four stories. It was very challenging for a conventional audience at the time, anywhere in the United States, abroad. It was not a it was not a success everywhere, let's say. I think it was appreciated much more late in the 20s, especially by avant-garde filmmakers like the Soviets again. For Eisenstein and all of the Soviet filmmakers, this was the Bible, specifically Intolerance. And that's why Griffith had to cut it down to make it, you know, a very well sort of straightforward narrative. So this is the main thing, and he also wanted to make a social statement. We all know that Griffith is the director of Birth of a Nation, which is probably one of the most controversial films of all times. And controversial is the accurate word. I'm not saying that it is just improper or racist. It is controversial because it is a film with highly troublesome content. It basically was one of the inspirations for the revival of the KKK. On the other hand, it is an incredibly talented work of art and very progressive in terms of film language. And that was unavoidable. And so at the same time, he was praised for making a very, you know, a new word in cinema, and being criticized back at the time, not just right now, even in the 19 teens, for making a highly problematic, well, racist film. And Griffith was very much a man of his time, but I don't think he was shocked to get such a reaction. And as especially Lillian Gish talked a lot about this, he wanted to rehabilitate himself. Even though he wasn't canceled, you know, it was a very different country. He could have, you know, went on making something much more racist, frankly. But he wanted to make something that would compensate that and make something indeed about intolerance and how intolerance is something that humanity lives with and will live with. So it was actually a very important social statement made, you know, in the middle of World War One. So I think it's there are many ways one can connect to this film, socially and aesthetically and historically.
Very good.
Of course, too.
Well, I'm excited to get to experience it myself. I'm sure all of the people who already have their passes and tickets purchased are excited to see this, and hopefully knowledge of this getting screened will bring other people that were on the fence about whether or not they want to come to this year's festival or not.
I think it's going to be quite spectacular. So I do recommend making the trip and watching the film, the print.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time, and my thanks also to everybody at George Eastman Museum and the other archives and all the technicians in between that are getting this print set up for this screening. Thank you so much.